I never thought my own living room would turn into a battlefield. It was supposed to be my safe place, the home I had built with warmth and memories. But that night, everything shattered. My son, Daniel, stood over me, his face twisted with anger I had never seen before. His wife, Melissa, hovered close, clutching a pair of scissors in her hand. "Sign the papers, Mom," Daniel growled, pressing his weight down on my shoulders, pinning me against the couch. "You've had enough. It's time to hand it over." I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. What are you doing?" My voice cracked. "I raised you. I gave you everything. Why are you?" Melissa's laugh cut me off, sharp, cold. "Because you're standing in the way, Evelyn. You're clinging to money you don't even need. $8 million could build our future, not rot away in your account." Before I could respond, I felt the cold blade of scissors against my scalp. And then, snip, strands of my hair fell onto the carpet. Each cut felt like a slash at my dignity. I tried to push them off, but Daniel's grip tightened. "Stop struggling, Mom. Just sign it. You don't want us to hurt you." Tears blurred my vision. My own son, the boy I once held when he cried, was now the man pressing me down, forcing me to surrender. My hand trembled as Melissa shoved a stack of papers in front of me. Legal documents, thick and official, reeking of betrayal. "Transfer everything," that she ordered. "All 8 million. Sign, or I'll keep cutting until you have nothing left to hide behind." I glanced at Daniel, begging for mercy, for a flicker of the son I once knew. But his eyes were cold, empty. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't looking at my boy anymore. I was staring into the face of my greatest enemy. My pen scratched across the page, shaky and broken. With each signature, I felt my life draining away. By the time I set the pen down, my hair was ragged, my pride torn apart, and $8 million gone. And all I could do was whisper, "How could you do this to me?" The silence afterward was louder than any scream. Daniel released me, but not with love, only with indifference. Melissa scooped up the documents with a smile that chilled my bones. "You'll thank us one day," she sneered. "This is for the best. For the best." The words echoed in my head like poison. I sat there, hair scattered across the floor, papers gone from my hands, money ripped from my name. My chest ached with more than grief. It was betrayal. Pure and merciless. I wanted to scream, to curse them, to claw back what they had stolen. But my voice broke into nothing. Instead, I stared at the front door as it slammed shut behind them. And then I noticed something. On the coffee table, beneath the chaos of hair and discarded papers, lay a single envelope. It wasn't part of the documents they had taken. My breath hitched as I reached for it with trembling fingers. Inside, I found a small photograph, worn, almost hidden. It wasn't mine. It wasn't something I had ever seen before. The picture showed Melissa, younger, standing with a man I didn't recognize. Their hands clasped, their faces close, too close. A date was scribbled on the back. A date that didn't make sense. A date from just last year, while she was already married to my son. I froze. My tears stopped, replaced by a flicker of something else. Confusion, suspicion. What was this? Who was that man? Why was this photo left behind? It wasn't an accident. I knew it. And suddenly, even in my shattered state, a thought pierced through the fog of pain. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. Maybe this photograph was the beginning of something bigger. Maybe it was the key. I clutched it to my chest, my body trembling not just from grief, but from a strange, dangerous hope. "They think they've destroyed me," I whispered into the empty room. "But they have no idea. The truth hasn't even started. I am Evelyn Carter, 61 years old, a widow, a mother. For most of my life, I believed love and sacrifice could hold a family together. I was wrong. I grew up poor, the daughter of a factory worker and a seamstress. Every dollar was stretched thin, every meal a small victory. Maybe that's why, when I married Richard Carter, an ambitious man who built a small construction business into a fortune, I vowed my son would never know the kind of hunger or shame I once knew. Daniel was my pride, my only child. From the moment I held him, I promised myself, he will never feel abandoned, he will never feel unloved, and so I poured everything into him. When Richard died suddenly of a heart attack 15 years ago, Daniel was only 21. I was devastated, but I knew I had to be strong, for him. I took over what my husband left behind. I learned about contracts, property, investments. Slowly, painfully, I turned the company into something even larger. By the time I was 50, I was worth more than I ever dreamed. Nearly $8 million in assets, properties, and savings. But money was never my goal. It was survival. It was security. It was love, transformed into something I could hand to Daniel so he would always be safe. At least, that's what I thought. I should have seen the signs earlier. Daniel grew restless as he got older. He wanted more, faster. He wanted luxury cars, expensive trips, a lifestyle far beyond what even millions could comfortably sustain. And then Melissa came. She was beautiful, polished, and sharp-tongued. At first, I tried to welcome her. I told myself Daniel deserved happiness, even if she didn't seem to like me. But soon, the balance shifted. My son stopped calling as often. Family dinners grew tense. And when Melissa began whispering about investments and opportunities, I felt the distance widen. "Mom, you don't understand," Daniel would say, brushing me off. "This isn't your world anymore. Not my world." How quickly a son can forget the hands that built his. I know I wasn't perfect. I was protective, maybe too much. I checked in too often, asked too many questions. I didn't want Daniel to repeat his father's mistakes, risking too much, losing his health to stress. Maybe that was my flaw. I gave too much, cared too deeply, and never learned to say no. That's why I was so vulnerable when they turned on me, because I never imagined it possible. I thought enemies came from outside, from competitors, from strangers. But no, my greatest enemy was born from my own body, raised with my own hands, fed with my own sacrifices. Daniel wasn't just my son. He was my weakness. And Melissa, she knew exactly how to use it. That night in my living room was not the first battle. It was only the moment the mask finally slipped. Looking back, I see now. The small betrayals had been happening for years. The little lies, the missing money, the way Daniel defended Melissa no matter what, even when she insulted me. But I had ignored it all, clinging to hope, clinging to love. Because admitting the truth, that my son could betray me, would have broken me long before tonight. I remember once, when he was 5, Daniel ran to me crying after falling off his bike. His knees were scraped, his face streaked with tears. He clung to me and said, "Mom, you'll always catch me, right?" I held him close and whispered, "Always." And I meant it. But now, years later, it is me who has fallen, broken, and bleeding in ways no one can see. And Daniel, he wasn't there to catch me. He was the one who pushed me down. My house had always been my sanctuary. Every corner held pieces of my life, framed photographs of Daniel's childhood, Richard's old leather chair by the fireplace, the kitchen table where I used to set out birthday cakes. But slowly, almost without me noticing, it changed. Melissa had a way of rearranging things. At first, it was subtle. She suggested moving a chair, swapping curtains, replacing the family photos with abstract art. Daniel agreed with everything she wanted, and I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. But each change chipped away at me. Piece by piece, my home no longer looked like mine. It looked like hers. The living room, once warm and full of family pictures, became sleek, cold, and expensive. The soft carpet I had chosen with Daniel when he was 10 was ripped out, replaced by polished wood. The family portrait from his high school graduation, gone. In its place hung a painting Melissa bought at an auction. Even the air felt different. Melissa filled the house with her perfume, sweet and suffocating, clinging to the curtains and couches. I still lived there, but it was no longer my safe place. It had become a stage, and I was no longer the mother of the house. I was an intruder. The tension grew worse at night. Daniel and Melissa often returned late from business dinners and networking events. Their laughter echoed down the hallway, sharp and mocking, while I lay awake in my room. Sometimes I overheard snippets. "She's too soft to fight us. Don't worry, Daniel. She'll give in eventually." They didn't know I was listening. Or maybe they didn't care. The walls of my home no longer protected me. They trapped me with whispers I couldn't escape. Melissa began bringing strangers over. Lawyers, investors, people I didn't know. They sat in my dining room, flipping through documents, speaking as if I were invisible. Once, I walked in on a meeting. Papers were spread across the table. Contracts, property transfers, things I didn't understand. "What is all this?" I asked. Melissa smiled like a predator. "Just business, Evelyn. Don't worry your pretty head. We'll explain when it's time." Daniel said nothing. He just avoided my eyes. That silence hurt more than her words. I started to notice locked drawers in my own office. Daniel had taken the keys, insisting he needed to manage the finances. My own accounts became harder to access. Passwords changed. Calls from my bank grew less frequent. When I confronted Daniel, he brushed me off. "Mom, you're tired. Let us handle things. You raised me to be responsible, didn't you?" Responsible. That word twisted like a knife, because the boy I raised was responsible. But the man in front of me? He was Melissa's shadow, nodding to her every command. The house no longer belonged to me. Neither did my son. What used to be Sunday dinners filled with laughter had turned into cold negotiations about assets and partnerships. Melissa always sat at the head of the table while Daniel hovered at her side. I sat in silence, the outsider in my own family, and yet I stayed. Because no matter how much they stripped from me, my voice, my place, my dignity, I clung to one fragile hope, that one day Daniel would remember who he was. That one day the home I built would feel like mine again, but I was wrong. The house wasn't just changing, it was preparing to crush me. I used to think Melissa was just a strong personality, confident, outspoken, maybe even a little rude, but not evil. But little by little she revealed who she truly was. It started with small jabs, disguised as jokes. "Evelyn, maybe you should stop wearing pearls, they make you look older." Or, "You really don't need to cook, Daniel likes my food better anyway." I smiled through it. I told myself I was being sensitive. But then her words sharpened. $8 million sitting in your name while you just sit here alone? It's selfish, don't you think? Selfish. That word lodged in my chest. I had sacrificed everything for my family, and she dared to call me selfish. Daniel never defended me. When Melissa spoke, he stayed silent. When I protested, he turned cold. I remember one night I found Melissa in my study, rifling through Richard's old files. "What are you doing in here?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "Making sure what's yours is properly managed," she said smoothly. "Those papers are private. Your husband is gone," she snapped, "and soon, so will your control. You can't hold on forever, Evelyn. It's Daniel's turn now." Her voice was laced with poison, and for the first time I saw the truth. Melissa didn't just want my son. She wanted my throne. Daniel had always been my boy, but in Melissa's hands he became someone I didn't recognize. He began to echo her words. "Mom, maybe Melissa's right. Maybe you should start letting go. What are you going to do with all that money anyway? You can't take it with you." The way he said it, like I was already gone, cut deeper than any knife. The betrayal became undeniable the day I overheard them in the kitchen. Melissa's voice was low, urgent. "She won't give it up easily. We'll have to push her harder." Daniel's response was quiet, but I heard it all. "I don't want to hurt her." Melissa scoffed. "She's weak. She'll cave. Just remember, it's not just money, it's our future. Do you want to keep living under her shadow, or do you want to be free?" Silence. Then his whisper. "Fine, whatever it takes." My knees nearly gave out. Whatever it takes. My son had chosen her. From then on, Melissa stopped pretending. She openly dictated what I should do, which accounts to transfer, which lawyers to see, which signatures to give. "Resistance is pointless," she told me one evening, her smile razor sharp. "Daniel agrees with me, and in this house, his word is law now." I stared at my son, begging him with my eyes to say something, anything, but he just lowered his head. That silence was his answer. That was the night I realized I wasn't just losing my fortune, I was losing Daniel forever. Melissa had won his loyalty, his heart, his future, and in return, I was left with nothing but betrayal. The breaking point didn't happen in silence. It happened in front of strangers, in my own dining room. Melissa had invited people again, 2 lawyers I had never met, a notary, and a man in a dark suit who never even introduced himself. They sat around my table, sipping wine from my crystal glasses, as if they owned the place. I walked in, startled. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice trembling. Melissa turned with a wide smile. "Perfect timing, Evelyn. We were just waiting for you." The lawyers slid papers across the table. Legal documents, property transfers, bank account authorizations. The kind of papers that, once signed, would erase me completely. I felt the air leave my lungs. "No, I didn't agree to this. These are my accounts." Melissa's smile sharpened. "Not anymore." Daniel stepped forward then. My Daniel, my only son. "Mom, please," he said, his tone rehearsed. "Just sign it. Don't make this harder than it has to be." My hands shook. "You're asking me to give up everything your father and I built. Do you even hear yourself?" He looked away, ashamed, or maybe unwilling to face me. Melissa slammed the pen onto the table. Enough of this performance. Sign, now. When I didn't move, she leaned closer, her voice venomous. Or should I tell everyone here the truth? That you're not fit to manage your own life? That you've lost your mind? The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to me. My cheeks burned with humiliation. They're strangers, I whispered. Why would you shame me like this? Melissa straightened, her lips curling. Because you leave me no choice. She turned to the lawyers, her voice suddenly loud enough for all to hear. You've seen her, haven't you? The confusion, the trembling hands, the way she forgets where she put things. Evelyn isn't well. The stress has been too much. Daniel and I are simply stepping in to protect her. The lawyers exchanged looks, but none spoke. The notary scribbled notes, nodding slightly as if Melissa's story was credible. And then I saw it. Pity. In their eyes. Not respect. Not fear. Pity. It was unbearable. I slammed my hand on the table. That's not true. I'm not crazy. I know exactly what I'm doing. Melissa tilted her head, her tone dripping false sympathy. Then prove it. Sign the documents willingly. Show them you're reasonable. Otherwise, she leaned closer, her whisper sharp as a blade. Otherwise, we'll take this to court. We'll file a petition to have you declared incompetent. Once that happens, you'll lose everything anyway. Money, property, freedom. They'll put you in a home, Evelyn. Do you want the world to watch you rot there? My body went cold. A home. Stripped not just of wealth, but of dignity and freedom. I saw the nods of the men around the table, the way they were already believing her. Tears blurred my vision as the pen was forced into my hand. Daniel guided it down to the papers. Please, Mom, he muttered. Just do it. His voice was quiet, almost pleading, but it carried no strength. He was already lost to her. And so, surrounded by strangers in my own home, my reputation shredded by lies, I signed away everything. $8 million, my life's work, my husband's legacy, gone. When it was over, Melissa gathered the papers with triumph in her eyes. The strangers stood, shook hands, and walked out with quiet satisfaction. I was left sitting there, broken, humiliated, exposed. Daniel lingered at the doorway, his face unreadable. For a moment, I thought I saw regret in his eyes, but then Melissa touched his arm, and, whatever flicker of guilt, he had vanished. They left together, hand in hand, while I sat alone in the ruins of my dignity, and in the silence one thought consumed me. She hadn't just stolen my fortune, she had stolen my name. After they left that night, silence swallowed the house. The papers were gone, signed and stolen. My name, my signature, my life's work, all reduced to ink on pages now in Melissa's hands. I sat at the dining table long after the strangers had disappeared, staring at the empty space where the documents had been. The crystal glasses still held traces of wine, fingerprints smudged on the surface, like ghosts mocking me. What lingered wasn't just the absence of wealth, it was the absence of respect. They hadn't only taken my fortune, they had stripped me of my dignity. The walls felt tighter, pressing in on me. The house, once alive with memories, now echoed with silence, cold, suffocating, unkind. I pressed my palms against the table to steady myself, but my hands trembled, not from age, not from weakness, but from the weight of humiliation. The days that followed blurred together. I stopped eating. Food lost its taste. Coffee turned cold in my cup as I sat motionless in the kitchen. Sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa's smirk, Daniel's silence, the stranger's pitying stares. My once strong body weakened. I stumbled, walking from room to room, my legs trembling as if they carried the weight of all my regrets. Even the house itself felt heavier. Rooms echoed with emptiness. Every corner reminded me of what had been taken. My husband's chair stood abandoned. The photographs of Daniel as a child mocked me. How could the boy who once clung to me in fear become the man who destroyed me without mercy? Friends called. I ignored them. Neighbors knocked. I pretended not to hear. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, broken, humiliated, stripped of everything. Word spread quickly. People whispered that I had lost my fortune, that I had gone senile, that my son had stepped in for my own good. Melissa's lies were already poisoning the outside world. When I went to the grocery store, I felt the stares. She's the one who gave up everything to her son, I heard someone mutter. She's not right in the head anymore. Shame burned hotter than grief. They didn't see the truth. They saw only what Melissa wanted them to see. A foolish old woman, weak and incapable. The humiliation broke me. I stopped leaving the house. Curtains stayed drawn. My phone remained silent. I had built a life of dignity, of respect. And in one night, Melissa destroyed it all. Not just my fortune, but my reputation, my identity, my place in the world. I was invisible, and worse, I was irrelevant. But the deepest wound came from Daniel. He didn't call. He didn't visit. Days turned into weeks, and I heard nothing from him. The silence was worse than his betrayal. It confirmed what I already feared. He had chosen Melissa, completely and without hesitation. I was no longer his mother. I was just an obstacle he had removed. One night I collapsed in the hallway. The weight of everything, loss, shame, betrayal, pressed down until my knees buckled. My head hit the floor, and for a moment I wondered if it would be easier to stay there forever. Tears soaked the hardwood. I whispered into the emptiness, maybe this is how I end. Forgotten. But then, my hand brushed against something. That photograph, the one of Melissa with the stranger left behind in the chaos. I had tucked it away, but somehow it found its way back to me, as if refusing to be forgotten. I picked it up, staring through blurry eyes at Melissa's smile beside that unknown man. And for the first time in weeks, a spark lit inside me. Tiny, fragile, but real. Maybe I was broken, but I wasn't finished. That photograph wouldn't leave me alone. I kept it on the nightstand, staring at it each night when sleep refused to come. Melissa's smile in the picture was different. Softer, younger, almost tender. And the man beside her, tall, sharp-suited, with his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. On the back, a date was scrawled in blue ink, April 12th, last year. The problem? Melissa had married Daniel 2 years earlier. This wasn't an old memory. This was recent. And whoever that man was, he wasn't just a friend. My curiosity pushed me out of the house for the first time in weeks. I went to a local photo shop, an old one, the kind where the owner still remembered how to dig into negatives. I asked him to look closer. Can you tell me where this was taken? He adjusted his glasses, squinted at the background. This looks like the Grand Regency Hotel. Downtown. Big conference hall. See the chandelier? My stomach tightened. That hotel was infamous for hosting business expos and private meetings. Do you recognize him? I asked, pointing at the man. The owner hesitated. I've seen him in the papers, real estate guy. Name's Charles Whitmore, I think. Charles Whitmore. The name hit me like a strike of lightning. Whitmore wasn't just anyone. He was a developer known for shady deals, bankruptcies, and lawsuits. My late husband had once called him a vulture who feeds on the desperate. And Melissa, she was with him. I returned home shaking, clutching the photo as if it were evidence in a trial. Because that's exactly what it was. Proof. Melissa had a secret. One she clearly didn't want me to find. The realization cracked something inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim. I had leverage. That night, I couldn't resist testing Daniel. I called him. It was the first time we had spoken since that horrible evening. His voice was cold, guarded. Mom, what do you want? I swallowed hard. Daniel, I found something. A photo of Melissa. Silence. Then sharp. What photo? My heart pounded. She was with Charles Whitmore last April. The line went dead silent. For a moment I thought he hung up. Then his voice came back, low and tense. You're imagining things. Stop digging, Mom. But there was fear in his tone. I heard it. I realized something important then. Daniel might have chosen Melissa over me. But Melissa wasn't just using me. She was using him too. And maybe, just maybe, Daniel didn't know everything. That night, lying awake with the photo clutched to my chest, I whispered into the darkness. They think they've stripped me of everything, but this could be the crack in their armor. For weeks I had drowned in despair, but now a new feeling began to rise in me, quiet, sharp, and dangerous. Resolve. Because if Melissa thought I was finished, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. Once the seed of suspicion was planted, I couldn't stop. For weeks, grief had paralyzed me. But now it fueled me. I started quietly. I may have lost $8 million, but I hadn't lost my instincts. Years of running Richard's company had taught me how to read people, how to follow trails others overlooked. Melissa thought she'd erased me, but she underestimated what a broken woman with nothing left to lose could do. I went back to the Grand Regency Hotel. The concierge remembered Melissa. Too well. Oh yes, Mrs. Carter, he said carefully, lowering his voice. She's been here many times with Mr. Whitmore. They usually requested the presidential suite. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a one-time meeting. It was an ongoing relationship. Do you know what they were doing? I asked, my voice trembling. The man hesitated, then leaned closer. Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but there were whispers about money, big transfers, land deals, and, well, about an affair. Affair. The word sliced me open. So it was true. Melissa wasn't just betraying me, she was betraying Daniel too. I left the hotel with a storm raging inside me. But fate wasn't finished revealing. On the way home, I passed a newsstand. A headline caught my eye. Whitmore Real Estate under federal investigation for fraud and money laundering. My breath caught. I grabbed the paper, scanning every line. Whitmore was accused of funneling millions through shell companies, using investors' money to cover his debts. Several witnesses had already come forward, and if Melissa was tied to him, then she wasn't just a thief. She was a criminal. That night, I spread everything I had on the table. The photograph, the notes from the hotel, the newspaper article. Pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to see. Melissa and Whitmore were connected. She wasn't after my fortune just for Daniel's sake. She needed money to cover Whitmore's schemes, or perhaps to run when it all collapsed. Daniel, poor Daniel. He thought Melissa was building a future with him, but in truth she was building her escape route. I knew I needed help, but who could I trust? My friends believed the rumors. The neighbors saw me as a mad old woman. Even Daniel had turned against me. I sat in the dark, wondering if I should give up. Then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Carter? A man's voice asked. Yes? This is Detective Harris. I believe you may have information connected to an ongoing case against Charles Whitmore. We'd like to speak with you. My blood froze. How did they know? And then I remembered. The hotel concierge. Maybe he had mentioned my visit. Maybe fate itself had intervened. Either way, this was my chance. For the first time in months, I felt a surge of power. Melissa thought she had won, but she didn't know the walls were closing in, not just from me, but from the law itself. I clutched the photograph in my hand and whispered, "You destroyed my dignity, my reputation, my family. But Melissa, you've left me the very weapon that will destroy you." Detective Harris met me in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I hadn't been out in weeks, and stepping into the world again felt strange, like I was walking with borrowed skin. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, sharp-eyed, serious. He slid a folder onto the table between us. "Mrs. Carter," he began, "we believe you may have valuable information about Charles Whitmore. We've been building a case for years, but recently, your daughter-in-law's name has surfaced more than once." Melissa. Hearing her name from his lips confirmed everything I feared and everything I hoped. I showed him the photograph. He studied it, then nodded slowly. "Yes, that's consistent with what we've heard. Melissa Carter, your daughter-in-law, has been seen attending Whitmore's private meetings. We suspect she's been laundering money for him." My chest tightened. "She stole $8 million from me," I whispered. "But it wasn't for Daniel, it was for him." Detective Harris leaned closer. "We think so too, and there's more. We believe she deliberately isolated you, spread rumors about your mental state, to weaken any legal challenge. That's Whitmore's tactic. Discredit the opposition, seize control of their assets." Tears burned my eyes. It was all too familiar. "That's exactly what she did to me," I said, my voice breaking. Then Harris dropped the real twist. "Mrs. Carter, there's evidence Melissa has been manipulating your son as well. We have bank transfers from your accounts that didn't go to Daniel. They went directly into Whitmore's shell companies." My breath caught. "Daniel doesn't know?" Harris shook his head. "From what we can tell, no. He's been convinced the money is theirs for their future. But in reality, Melissa has been funneling most of it behind his back. She's setting him up to take the fall when Whitmore collapses." I felt my heart twist painfully. Daniel wasn't just my betrayer. He was her victim too. Memories rushed back. His hesitation, the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the way his voice cracked when he whispered, "I don't want to hurt her." Had he been fighting her, even just a little? Had he been drowning under her control, the way I once had? For the first time since that night in my living room, pity surged through me, for my own son. Melissa had stolen my money, my dignity, my reputation. But worst of all, she had stolen Daniel's soul. Detective Harris slid another paper toward me. Mrs. Carter, we're preparing to bring Whitmore down. But to do that, we need witnesses, documents, anything that ties Melissa directly to him. If you're willing to cooperate, we can not only expose Whitmore, but also clear your name." My fingers trembled as I held the photograph again. This was it. The weapon she had left behind, the mistake that could unravel her empire. I looked up, my voice steadier than it had been in months. "I'll help you. Whatever it takes." She thought she destroyed me, but I'm still here. That night I returned home with a new fire burning inside me. For weeks I had drowned in despair, but now I had a mission. Melissa thought she had silenced me, but soon the world would see her for what she truly was. And Daniel? My son. I would find a way to save him too, because no matter how far he had fallen, he was still my child. And Melissa was not going to take him from me forever. For months Melissa had stripped me down, humiliated, broken, left me a shell of who I once was. But pain has a strange power. It can bury you, or it can forge you, and I chose the second. The first change was physical. I stood in front of the mirror one morning, scissors in hand. My hair, jagged from Melissa's cruel cut, hung in uneven strands. For weeks I avoided mirrors, ashamed of my reflection. Not anymore. I cut the rest away, short and sharp. Each snip felt like shedding another piece of humiliation. When I was done, the woman staring back at me wasn't pitiful. She was fierce. Then I dressed differently. No more faded sweaters or clothes that made me invisible. I pulled out Richard's tailored blazers, the jewelry I had hidden away. I painted my lips a deep red, steadying my hands as if reclaiming a weapon. When I walked into town that day, people stared. But not with pity, with surprise. The whispers shifted. "She looks strong." "Is that Evelyn Carter?" For the first time since losing everything, I felt taller than the stairs. But the true transformation wasn't in my reflection. It was in my spirit. I began rebuilding connections, calling old business partners, friends I had pushed away. At first they were cautious, repeating Melissa's lies about my fragile mind, but when I spoke, clear and firm, they listened. "Don't believe the rumors," I told them. "I'm not finished, and soon, the truth will come out." Each call, each meeting added a brick back to the foundation Melissa tried to smash. Detective Harris coached me, teaching me how to gather evidence carefully. I combed through old files, dug into hidden emails, traced transfers. Each discovery was a shard of power in my hands, and with each piece my confidence grew. I wasn't just a mother who had been betrayed. I was a woman preparing for war. Daniel still hadn't called. But instead of breaking me, his silence fueled me. Because when I returned to confront Melissa, I wouldn't come crawling. I would come standing tall, armed with the truth she never saw coming. One night, as I locked away the evidence in a new safe, I caught my reflection again. Gone was the broken widow begging for scraps of dignity. In her place stood Evelyn Carter, sharp, unyielding, dangerous. I whispered to my reflection, steady and cold. They thought I was weak, but they forgot. I built this family from nothing, and now I will take everything back. The day came sooner than I expected. Melissa and Daniel were hosting a charity gala downtown, flaunting their wealth, parading their power. I wasn't invited, of course. Melissa had worked hard to erase me from society. But this time, I didn't need an invitation. I walked into the grand ballroom dressed in black silk, my hair cropped short and fierce, jewels glittering at my throat. Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire. "She's here, Evelyn Carter." I thought she lost everything. She looks unstoppable. And then Melissa saw me. Her smile faltered, just for a second. But it was enough. Daniel approached, his face pale. "Mom, you shouldn't be here." I met his eyes. For the first time in months, he looked small to me, like the little boy who once asked if I'd always catch him. "I should have been here all along," I said calmly. Before he could respond, Detective Harris and 2 federal agents stepped forward from the crowd. The music stopped. The ballroom fell silent. "Melissa Carter," Harris's voice rang out, "you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to launder money with Charles Whitmore." Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed, guests clutched their pearls. Melissa laughed, sharp and defiant. "You can't prove anything." That was my cue. I stepped forward, holding up the photograph. "Then explain this, Melissa. Explain the meetings at the Grand Regency. Explain the transfers into Whitmore's shell accounts. Explain why my money, $8 million, vanished straight into his hands." The agents produced files, copies of the evidence I had gathered, emails, bank transfers, witness statements. The net had already closed. Melissa's smirk collapsed. Daniel staggered back, stunned. "Melissa, is this true?" She turned on him, venom in her eyes. "Don't look at me like that. You were too weak to get what we needed. I had to do it myself." Her words silenced the room. The mask was gone, and Daniel finally saw what I had known all along. Melissa never loved him. He had been nothing but a pawn. As the agents cuffed her, Melissa fought, her voice shrill. "You'll regret this, Evelyn. You'll die alone." I stood tall, unshaken. "No, I'll live free, and you'll rot where you belong." The crowd erupted, some gasping, some applauding, some whispering frantically into their phones. The humiliation she once forced on me was now hers, magnified 100 times. Afterward, Daniel stood frozen, his face pale, broken. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Mom, I swear I didn't know." For a long moment I just looked at him, my son, my betrayer, my blood, and then softly I said, "You let her use you, you let her break us, but you're still my son, and you will have to earn your way back." Tears welled in his eyes. He nodded, wordless. Weeks later, justice was swift. Melissa was sentenced to years in federal prison. Whitmore's empire collapsed, dragging him down with her. And me? I wasn't the broken widow anymore. My name was cleared, my dignity restored. Slowly, with Detective Harris's help, I recovered most of what had been stolen. But more importantly, I reclaimed myself. Now when I walk through my home, it feels like mine again. The photographs are back on the walls. Richard's chair is once more by the fire. And though my heart still aches, it beats stronger than before. Because I survived. And I will never, ever be silenced again. I close my story with the words I wish Melissa had heard before she tried to bury me. They thought they destroyed me, but they only created someone far more powerful. It has been a year since that night in the ballroom. Sometimes I still wake in the dark, hearing Melissa's laughter, feeling the cold weight of Daniel's hands pinning me down. The memories don't vanish so easily, but now, when the fear rises, I remind myself, I survived. Melissa is behind bars, her name a stain in every newspaper. Whitmore will likely die in prison, his empire reduced to rubble. Justice was slow, but it came. Daniel, he is different now. Broken, humbled, lost. For months he tried to call to see me, but I needed time. Time to heal. Time to forgive. Slowly, cautiously, we've begun to rebuild. He helps around the house, visits me without Melissa's shadow at his side. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of the boy he used to be, and it gives me hope. As for me, I live differently now. I no longer measure my worth in dollars. I invest in peace, in quiet mornings with tea, in laughter with friends I once shut out. The world whispers my story like a scandal, but I choose to wear it like armor. Because the truth is, betrayal didn't end me. It transformed me. And if there's one lesson I carry, it's this. You can lose your fortune, you can lose your reputation, you can even lose the love you thought unbreakable. But if you refuse to lose yourself, then you haven't lost it all.